We all have habits, small routines, and repeated decisions that quietly define our lives. Some of them lift us up, and some silently keep us stuck. We might pray for change, dream of success, and hope for a better version of ourselves, but we forget that transformation doesn't start with miracles, it starts with habits. When I look back at my own life, I realize that the biggest battles I ever fought were not against people or circumstances. They were against my own habits. The habit of doubting myself, the habit of giving up too soon, the habit of comparing my journey with others. These weren't just patterns, they were prisons I built with my own hands. But the reality is, you can unlearn the bad habits. Change isn't about becoming somebody else. It's about becoming the person you've always wanted to be. The ability to rewrite your narrative isn't out there. It's in the decisions you make every day. So today, let's discuss breaking those chains, the bad habits that keep you hostage. Because once you learn to shatter them, you don't merely change your behavior, you change your destiny. We tend to underestimate the subtle power of our daily routines. The reality is that our life is not formed by the major decisions we make from time to time, but by the small decisions we repeat each and every day. How we think, how we respond, how we begin our days and end our evenings. These habits incrementally create the person we become. When I tell you, acknowledge the power of habit, I mean that it is time to examine closely the small things that govern our days, because the small things ultimately determine our fate. Consider it. Nobody wakes up one day and finds themselves trapped in a bad habit. It creeps up on you, like the soft sound of a whisper building into a tempest. Perhaps you said to yourself, just this once, and suddenly that once became habit. That's the subtle danger of habits. They are innocuous at the beginning, but gradually they wear grooves into your brain, making it more difficult to deflect. And the worst part, sometimes we become so accustomed to these patterns that we no longer even recognize them. We begin to find ourselves saying, "This is just who I am." But no, it's not who you are, it's what you've practiced. When I first started observing my own patterns, I saw that I had established habits that were quietly pilfering my happiness. The tendency to dwell on what I'd lost rather than on what I still had. The tendency to think that my limitations were who I was. The tendency to relive pain rather than rewrite purpose. These tendencies didn't happen overnight. They developed through recurring thought, recurring fear, recurring excuses. And when I realized what they were, I made a choice. I could continue to feed them, or I could begin to battle them. Admitting your bad habits doesn't weaken you. It empowers you. And empowerment is the first step toward freedom. Because when you're empowered, you quit blaming your situation and take responsibility for your response. You begin to see how certain thoughts lead to certain actions, how certain settings breed old habits. You realize that every response is a choice. Even if it feels like an automatic response, it doesn't start with strength, force. It starts with truth. Sit down, ask yourself, what am I doing every day that prevents me from being my best self? Is it mindlessly scrolling through your phone all the time? Is it thinking too much before acting? Is it speaking poorly of yourself even in your head? When you recognize those patterns, you take back your power. Because you cannot transform what you won't confront. And don't forget, you don't have to do it all at once. Transformation isn't about doing it perfectly, it's about moving forward. You trade one small behavior at a time. You take one thoughtful step every day. You win small battles even if nobody is noticing. Because those little victories build upon each other to create dramatic change. Every time you practice discipline over ease, awareness over habit, you're rewiring your life. There will be times when you'll regress into your old habits. And that's perfectly fine. Change isn't that you won't slip. It's that you'll recover sooner each time you do. The trick is to be kind to yourself. The same amount of time it took for bad habits to develop, the same time good ones do. Be kind, but be consistent. When I finally realized this, my life didn't change overnight, but my mind did. I knew that habits aren't our nemesis, they are instruments. They can demolish us or they can resurrect us. The decision is always ours. You and I possess the same force, the force to pause, consider, and reroute. And once you begin recognizing that strength, you stop living on autopilot and begin living with intention. So today, I want you to ask yourself one question. What habit is holding you back from the life you deserve? Because the moment you identify it, you've already taken the first brave step toward breaking it. And once you shatter it, you'll find something lovely. Freedom does not start when all the things surrounding you change. It starts when you do. I tend to believe breaking a bad habit is about slicing something out of our lives altogether. Like we can just cut out a chunk of ourselves and leave the rest of us intact. But the thing is, our brains don't function that way. You can't simply remove a habit, you need to replace it. Each time you cease an action that has become habitual, there's a void left over. And if you don't fill it with something more positive, that old routine will insidiously creep back in. Actual change occurs not when you're concentrating on what you are attempting to halt, but when you reallocate your energy to what you wish to begin. I discovered this myself when I was fighting my own patterns. I found that the more I insisted, I am going to cease negative thinking, the more my mind came up with fresh ways to remind me of all that was going wrong. But when I turned my attention to gratitude, when I started making a list of little blessings each morning, the mood shifted. Rather than attempting to break a bad habit, I began cultivating a good one. That's the trick. Your brain doesn't like a void. It requires something to grasp. If you remove the negative, fill the space with something positive to grab onto. Consider this. Nobody can take darkness out of a room. It takes bringing light in. The same is true for our habits. If you want to end complaining, begin to voice gratitude. If you want to end procrastinating, begin to prioritize your day. If you want to end doubting, begin to declare your worth aloud. It will feel odd to start with. It will even feel artificial. But gradually, those new behaviors will take hold, and the old ones will slowly begin to slip away. Replacement isn't only about modifying what you do. It's about changing who you are. Because every time you do something over and over, your brain hears a message about what kind of person you are. When you continue to tell yourself, I can't, your brain accepts that. When you begin to tell yourself, I'm learning, your brain accepts that as well. Every positive replacement is a vote for the person you're becoming. That's how change happens, not with sudden inspiration, but with consistent repetition of better choices. One of the greatest things I learned is that willpower isn't enough. You can't keep battling yourself and hope to have peace. You require alignment. You require a why that is so powerful that it will replace the comfort of your old behavior. Ask yourself, what am I benefiting from continuing to cling to this pattern? What might I benefit from releasing it? When you understand the larger picture, letting go is no longer a struggle and is instead a choice. And yes, it's not quick. There are going to be times when your mind is going to pull you back into what you know. That's fine. Change isn't about being perfect, it's about being conscious. Each time you catch yourself doing that, stop, take a breath, and exchange that moment for a better one. Over time, those small replacements create resilience, discipline, and confidence. You are no longer a prisoner of your old patterns and are now the designer of your new ones. I've learned that the best way to break a bad habit is not through creating resistance, but through creating redirection. Don't fight the old, build the new. Rather than, I don't want to be like this, begin to say, I am becoming like that. When you nourish your mind with new words, new thoughts, new actions, it will start rewiring itself. That's how change feels. It's not some explosion of change, but a subtle, gradual shift that one day makes you think, the person who used to struggle to give up that bad habit isn't you anymore. So if you wish to transform your life, don't think about what you're attempting to get rid of. Think about what you're attempting to become. Because progress isn't derived from what you get rid of. It's derived from what you decide to take its place with. We wait for inspiration to hit us before we act. We say to ourselves, I'll begin when I'm ready, or I'll change when I'm in the right mood. But motivation comes and goes. It arrives in waves. And if you rely on it, you'll spend most of your life waiting for the next wave. What really drives change is not motivation. It's discipline. Motivation is what gets you started, but it's discipline that keeps you going once the excitement wears off, when nobody's looking, and when the road begins to get heavy. I remember times in my life when I was utterly uninspired. Some days I would wake up feeling lost, unmotivated, not knowing even what I was fighting for. And in those moments, I understood something powerful. If I waited for motivation to come back, I would never get going. So instead, I chose to go even when I didn't have it. That's what discipline is. Doing what must be done, even when you don't feel like it. It's the quiet strength that says, keep going, when every inner voice is saying, stop. The beauty of discipline is that it is consistent. Little, consistent behaviors that are done with intention can change your habits and restore your thinking. You don't have to conquer a mountain in a day. You simply must keep one consistent step forward at a time. When you begin to show up for yourself, day after day, your mind starts to conform. It starts to think that you are about change. That's when actual progress starts, not in spurts of enthusiasm, but in slices of quiet persistence. Motivation is an emotion, but discipline is a choice. Emotions shift with time, weather, and mood, but choices make you who you are. When you do what you do based on motivation, you work only when it's exciting. When you work based on discipline, you work no matter what. The distinction between individuals who desire change and individuals who make it happen is in one word: consistency. Each day that you appear even badly, you build the muscle of discipline, and over time, that muscle sees you through days when motivation is lost. Consider it similar to watering a plant. You can't water it once and anticipate that it will grow. It's the daily tending, the small habitual effort that causes it to bloom. Your routines, your aspirations, your ambitions, those are just like that. Those have to be loved, not during the times of enthusiasm, but during the times of fatigue. Because the actual change occurs in the quiet moments, in the moments when nobody's clapping for you, when the progress is unseen. That's when discipline is your friend. And let me tell you something: discipline has nothing to do with being self-critical. It's about being loyal to yourself. It's not discipline, it's self-respect. When you remain faithful to your habits, when you keep your commitments, when you do what you said you'd do even when it hurts, you're instilling in yourself that you can be trusted. You're demonstrating to yourself that your word is valuable. That's how confidence is developed, not through approval from others, but through daily demonstration of discipline. I understand it is not simple. There will be times you will fall, times you will lose concentration, times when you will feel like giving up. But keep in mind, discipline is not about never failing. It is about getting up quicker every time you fall. Even if all you can do one day is a small thing, do it. Because every little bit makes a difference. Every disciplined thing you do puts a brick on the wall of your strength. So don't pursue motivation. Develop discipline. Don't wait until you're ready. Just start. Because the reality is that readiness is conceived through repetition. And the more discipline you practice, the stronger it becomes your second nature. One day you will be looking back and you will see that what used to be difficult for you is now your habit. And what used to be hard work for you now comes effortlessly. That's the power of discipline. It makes your I have to become I get to. It takes your everyday effort and turns it into breakthrough growth. There's something very human about falling down. We mess up, we fail ourselves, we lose our way, and sometimes we slip right back into the habits that we thought we'd kicked. And in those moments, we tend to react with guilt and shame. We beat ourselves up over not being strong enough, not being consistent enough, not being perfect. But this is what I've figured out. Real change isn't never falling again, it's learning how to get up with compassion. Letting yourself off the hook isn't weakness, it's strength. It's the point you choose that your past failures won't control your future improvement. When I say breaking bad habits, I don't necessarily mean changing your ways. I mean changing your relationship with yourself. Because the thing is, it's not the failing that breaks us. It's what we do to ourselves after. We relive the moment, we beat ourselves up constantly, and before long, we begin to think that we're beyond being changed. But the real fact is that each and every individual who has changed their life has failed in between. The only difference between people who go ahead and people who remain stagnant is that one learns to forgive themselves and attempt once again. Forgiveness liberates you to begin anew. It removes the weight of perfectionism and substitutes compassion. When you forgive yourself, you're not justifying your faults. You're conceding that you're human. You're admitting, I am still learning. And that's all right. Because no matter how committed you get, there will be some days you stumble back into old ways. You'll miss a workout, lose patience, waste time, or doubt yourself once again. And in those moments, you have two options: to shame yourself for falling, or to remind yourself lightly that change takes time, not an instant. There was one point where I felt like I had utterly failed myself. I had promised things I couldn't deliver on, and the guilt was consuming me. But then I understood every morning sunrise is evidence that life grants us another opportunity, and so must we. The same mercy that we show to others, we need to show to ourselves. You cannot mend where you keep berating yourself. Growth is only possible in a setting of patience, not pressure. As you forgive yourself, you create the gateway to resilience. You cease to view your slip-ups as the doomsday of your journey and begin viewing them as part of it. Every fall teaches you something about your trigger points, your habits, your limits. It's all feedback, not failure. If you learn from it, you haven't fallen, you've evolved. And next time, you'll bounce up a little quicker, remain strong a little longer, and know yourself a little better. So if you've been critical of yourself recently, I want you to breathe in deeply and remember, you are not your bad habits. You are the one struggling against them. You are not your mistakes. You are the bravery it takes to start over again. Each time you rise up after stumbling, you're showing yourself that growth is real. Each time you practice self-compassion rather than self-criticism, you're choosing progress over perfection. Quitting bad habits isn't about being perfect. It's about being loyal. It's about returning and returning, even when it's sloppy, even when it's painful. And the wonderful part is that each time you begin anew, you begin stronger, for now you have experience and compassion on your side. You learn to trust yourself once more, not because you never fail, but because you never give up. So the next time you find yourself slipping back, don't mutter, I failed. Instead say, I'm learning. Forgive yourself, stand up, and move on, because every new start requires a heart that's capable of forgiveness. And sometimes the strongest act of strength is simply to let yourself start again, with softness, with courage, and with hope. However strong your will or however determined your heart may be, you cannot grow in a climate that constantly tugs you back toward your old ways. The individuals you surround yourself with, the atmosphere that surrounds you, even the environment where you reside, all of these affect your habits more than you know. That's the reason that one of the best ways to break bad habits is by developing a supportive environment. Because you can't get well in the same place where you got ill, and you can't change while still in the same circle, reminding you of what you were. While I began my path of transformation, I realized that my environment had a strong grip on my routines. Some individuals made me feel trapped. Some locations evoked past feelings, and even the things I talked about influenced my thinking. The minute I started to change surroundings, physically, emotionally, and socially, the whole game changed. It wasn't simple to leave the known places or those individuals who were not aware of my development, but it had to be done. At times, it's protecting your peace that you opt for silence over noise, distance over drama, and solitude over shallow company. The thing is, you can't create new habits in an environment that continues to feed your old ones. You'll eventually begin to absorb them if you're around negativity. You'll fail to maintain focus if you're regularly exposed to distraction. That's why change starts not just within you, but also around you. Start by decluttering your space. Clean your room, organize your desk, surround yourself with reminders of your goals. Your environment should inspire you, not drain you. Even small shifts, like a note on your mirror that says, "You can do this," or replacing mindless scrolling with a book beside your bed, can make a huge difference. But environment isn't just about physical space. It's also about people. The people you surround yourself with can either support your growth or undermine it. Surround yourself with people who challenge you to be better, who rejoice in your progress, who help remind you of your strength when you have forgotten it yourself. If you hang out with people who complain, you'll become a complainer. If you hang out with people who take action, you'll become a mover. Growth is contagious, but so is stagnation. Pick wisely. You may need to release some relationships that don't fit the person you're evolving into anymore. That's not selfish. It's required. Some individuals will be a part of your narrative, but not all the pages, and that's all right. As you evolve, your entourage will decrease, but the vibe will intensify, because change isn't about obtaining more. It's about having purposeful. When you surround yourself with positivity, purpose, and peace, your mind tends to synchronize with it. And don't forget the environment inside of you, the space in your own head. What are the words that reside there? Are they supportive or are they brutal? Are you nourishing your mind with hope or with terror? Because sometimes the most poisoned environment isn't out here, it's inside. Be kind to your thoughts. Talk to yourself in the same way you'd speak to a friend. Make inner space a place that invites expansion, forgiveness, and bravery. As you synchronize your outer and your inner, your habits mirror. You no longer try to force it, but flow towards it. You'll be able to wake up early when your bedroom is calm. You'll be more inclined to improve when your tribe emits positivity. You'll be kinder to yourself when your headspace is secure. The ecosystem you build becomes the platform in which your best self can finally shine. So take a good hard look around you. Does your space represent who you desire to become? If not, it's time to shake things up, rebuild, and replenish. Because true change doesn't come through force of will. It comes when your world and your soul collaborate. And when that alignment arrives, stopping bad habits no longer hurts. It feels like a normal progression toward the life you've always deserved to have. We tend to think about change as something far away, something that will arrive someday, when things get better or when the timing is right. But the reality is, that day is today. Change doesn't wait for the perfect time. It starts in the smallest choice you make today. Quitting your bad habits is not about being someone new. It's about coming back to who you were originally meant to be. Yes, the journey will challenge you. You will stumble, you will struggle, and there will be days when your old ways will attempt to whisper you back into complacency. But keep in mind this. Every time you opt for awareness instead of autopilot, every time you substitute negativity with intention, Every time you pardon yourself and start anew, you are rewriting your narrative. You are demonstrating that transformation is not an occasion, it's a promise. Be around others and in places that make you remember your strength. Be patient, be disciplined, and most importantly, be kind to yourself and to the world. Because true growth is not about being loud. It's quiet, it's steady, and it's very personal. And one day you'll look back and understand that habits, which once ruled you now, are lessons that made you. You'll understand every fall was needed, every reboot was sacred, and every step was taking you to the strong, serene version of you that you were always destined to meet. So today, take the first step. Don't wait for the world to change. Be the change. Shatter your bad habits. And you'll find that what you're actually shattering are the boundaries you once placed upon your own life.